girlfriend asked for a break because of a new guy, so I left her and moved to a new city. Now she's stalking me, her parents apologized, and she wants me back, but I refuse to talk to her. I, 34 am struggling with whether I'm in the wrong for refusing to talk to my ex, Sarah, 29F, not her real name. There's a lot of history here, and I'll do my best to explain everything clearly. In mid-2022, I met Sarah at work, and we hit it off immediately. I fell for her quickly, and it didn't take long before we started dating. However, early in our relationship, Sarah broke up with me over something minor. To make matters worse, she made a scene in front of everyone at work. I was devastated but didn't want to leave my job at first. Eventually, I realized I still had feelings for her, and seeing her every day became too painful. That's when I decided to quit and find a new job. We lived close to each other, so we bumped into each other frequently over the next few months. We started talking again, but even though I still had feelings for her, I couldn't bring myself to consider getting back together. What she had done hurt me deeply. After a couple of months, she told me she regretted breaking up with me over something so minor. She admitted that doing it in front of everyone was wrong and that she had been thinking about it ever since. She seemed genuinely remorseful, and I could see she meant it. Feeling that her apology was sincere, I asked if she wanted to give our relationship another try. She agreed, and by early 2023, we were officially back together. 1 year later, things were going great. We talked about marriage and building a future together, which made me feel ready to take the next step. I decided to surprise her with a proposal and started working extra hours to save for a house, so we could marry not long after. I didn't tell her why I was working so much because I wanted it to be a complete surprise. Then, out of nowhere, she asked for a break. I was blindsided, and when I asked why, she refused to explain. Around the same time, I noticed she had been talking nonstop about a new guy at her workplace. But suddenly, she stopped mentioning him altogether, which made me suspicious. Confused and hurt, I reached out to one of my close friends, Emily, not her real name, who, along with her boyfriend, still worked at the same place as Sarah. I vented to Emily about what was going on and asked if she knew anything. She said she didn't because she worked in a different department, but she promised to ask around. A few days later, Emily got back to me. She told me that Sarah had been feeling like I was distant lately, especially with me working extra hours and not going out much. Emily said some of Sarah's colleagues had been encouraging her to take a break, claiming I wasn't treating her well and wasn't as invested in the relationship. On top of that, they were trying to match her up with a new guy at work, saying they'd make a better pair. I told Emily about my plans to propose and buy a house for Sarah and me. That was the reason I'd been working so much. I wanted to surprise her with something big. After about 2 weeks, Sarah called me and asked to meet up. I agreed but told her up front that I needed an explanation for why she wanted a break before we could discuss anything else. She brought up how distant I had seemed, saying it made her feel like I wasn't as invested in the relationship anymore. I told her that if she had just talked to me about it, she would have known there was a reason for my behavior, but now, it didn't matter anymore. Then she mentioned the new guy at her workplace. I said his name before she could, and she looked surprised, asking how I knew. I told her I wasn't an idiot. I'd noticed how she suddenly stopped talking about him after bringing him up all the time. She swore that she had never cheated on me. I replied that looking for someone better at the first sign of trouble could be considered cheating by some. At that point, I told her I didn't want to hear whatever else she had to say. Whether or not she wanted to get back together didn't matter. I was breaking up with her regardless. The breakup deeply hurt me. I couldn't bear staying in the same place, so I asked my company for a transfer and used the money I'd saved for the proposal to start over in a new city. While talking to Emily, the friend I had vented to before, she apologized to me. She admitted that she had slipped up and told Sarah about my plans to propose and buy a house. Emily said Sarah broke down crying after hearing that. I appreciated Emily's honesty, but it didn't change what had happened. By mid-December last year, I returned to my hometown to spend Christmas and New Year's with my family. Some friends wanted to organize a party to get everyone together, since many of us, myself included, had moved away and were only visiting for the holidays. Sarah was invited too. We barely interacted that night, just a quick hi in passing. At one point, I glanced at her and saw her smiling while chatting with a group of women. That smile brought back so many memories. I realized that seeing her smile still made me feel the same way I did the first time I saw it. I thought to myself, how screwed up am I that I still feel this way? Despite those lingering feelings, I was still sad and deeply hurt by how things had ended. Looking back, I also started to blame myself. I should have paid more attention to how she was feeling. I could have told her about the extra work and why I was doing it. Maybe things would have turned out differently. Later that evening, One of my friends mentioned that Sarah's relationship with the guy from her work had only lasted a couple of months. After the holidays, I planned to return to the city where I now lived. My vacation ended on January 6th, so I decided to leave on Friday. That way, I'd have Saturday to sort everything out at home and prepare for the week ahead, with Sunday to relax before going back to work. Before I left, one of my friends from back home called me. He said he had a favor to ask on behalf of someone else and warned me that I wouldn't like it. I could already feel my stomach sinking. Then he told me it was Sarah. She was moving to the same city where I lived to work at her relative's company, and she needed a ride. He asked if I could take her. I didn't even think about it before I said no. The idea of being stuck in a car with her for hours was too much to bear. It would have been painfully awkward, just like the party, and I wasn't ready to put myself through that. He told me that Sarah and I needed to talk, but I wasn't having any of it. I went back home, and last week, I went for a run and stopped to rest a little in a park when I heard a familiar voice say, "Hi." It was Sarah. She tried to start a conversation by asking how I was and mentioning that we didn't get a chance to talk at the party, but I cut her off, saying I didn't want to talk to her. She told me not to be like that we needed to have a conversation, but I said no. She asked how I could still resent her after almost a year and after everything we'd been through, but I told her it wasn't resentment. I was very honest. I told her that thinking about her, talking about her, or even seeing her still hurts a lot, and that's why I couldn't talk to her. She said that was exactly why we needed to talk. I didn't see the point. I just walked away. Since then, Sarah's tried to approach me twice more, and I've shut her down both times. Some of my friends think I'm being too harsh and that I should talk to her for closure. Others say it's not okay to torture her over what happened forever. But that's not what this is about. I don't have any resentment or negative feelings toward her anymore. I even recognize now that I share some of the blame. But it still hurts. I can't talk to her because it's like reopening an old wound that never fully healed. So, Ada for refusing to talk to her? Additional information from Oop after reading comments. Oop, thank you all for your advices. I just want to explain better one thing. My friends are not calling me or messaging me saying that I should talk to her, that's just the opinion of some of them when the subject was brought up. Update 1, February 2, 2025. Hey everyone, I wanted to give an update and thank you all for your input. I took the time to read through every comment, and while I didn't respond to all of them, it was only because I didn't have anything to add. I'm truly grateful for everyone who shared their thoughts. It has been incredibly helpful. After reading everything and thinking it through, I've decided to stick to my decision not to talk to Sarah. Something I forgot to mention in my original post, though I did tell a few commenters, is that I blocked her everywhere after we broke up the second time. Over the last few days, it seems like her persistence has started to backfire. Some of our mutual friends, including the ones who initially told me I should talk to her, have become frustrated with her constant attempts to contact me. Apparently, they've started turning on her because of it. 3 days ago, Emily, the friend I vented to back then, made a post on social media about stalkers. She didn't name Sarah, but a lot of people picked up on what she meant. I've also seen several comments on my original post suggesting that Sarah might have been stalking me. Her job in the same city and her coincidental appearance at the park all line up with that theory. For what it's worth, I know her uncle owns a company here, so maybe that is really why she moved. But honestly, it's not my problem, and I'm not gonna look into it. Things have been quieter. Friends have dropped the subject, and Sarah hasn't tried to reach out again. That is, until yesterday. I watched the UFC event with some coworkers. When it ended, I was heading to my car when my phone rang. It was one of our mutual friends calling. She said she had been talking to Sarah and asked if she could pass along a message. I sighed but told her to make it quick. The message was simple. Sarah said she understands why I don't want to talk to her. She promised she wouldn't try to reach out again but added that she still thinks we need to talk. She said the door is open if I ever want to. I told my friend I didn't have a message to pass back and asked her not to bring up Sarah again in our conversations. If what Sarah said is true, it's a relief, but I'm not holding my breath. I wouldn't be surprised if she tries something else. Maybe she thinks giving me space will make me go to her, but it won't. That chapter of my life is closed. Right now, I just want to focus on myself. I probably won't be dating anyone anytime soon. If there is one thing I've learned, it's that I need to get to know people better before jumping into a relationship. I've also been thinking about how loosely I use the word friend. That is another part of my life I need to rethink. Some of the people I have called friends have proven they don't have my best interests at heart. A few people suggested therapy in the comments, and I'll admit, it is something I've been considering. For now, I'm giving myself time to heal on my own, but if I still don't feel right after a while, I will look into it. Thanks again to everyone who took the time to comment. Your advice has been a huge help in sorting all this out. Update 2, February 16, 2025. There's been no sign of Sarah these past few weeks, and no one's brought her up in conversation either. That's a good thing. Then, last Tuesday, February 11th, I got a DM from Sarah's mother. She said she wanted to apologize for her daughter's behavior and asked me to call her. I've always had a great relationship with Sarah's parents. They're genuinely good people. Even during both breakups, they were always respectful and never overstepped. I didn't really want to talk about Sarah anymore, but I also didn't want to ignore her mother. After thinking it over for a few minutes, I decided I'd call her. However, if she tried to convince me to speak with Sarah or anything along those lines, I'd politely end the conversation. When she answered, she put me on speaker so Sarah's father could join in. I half expected to hear Sarah's voice too, but fortunately that didn't happen. The conversation itself was actually really good. They started by apologizing for Sarah's recent behavior. I immediately told them they had nothing to apologize for, but they insisted, saying they felt it was the right thing to do. They also told me they had no idea what had been going on until recently. Once they found out, they called Sarah and had a long talk with her. Her father admitted that it was the kind of conversation he'd expect to have with a teenager, not an almost 30-year-old woman. Sarah promised them she'd stay away from me and seek therapy. I felt relieved, not just for myself, but for her too. Everything that happened between us wasn't great, but I genuinely wish her the best. I hope she finds happiness. Before we ended the call, I thanked her parents and reiterated how much I respected and admired them. Now, I can finally say with certainty that this is over. Sarah would never betray her parents' trust. Thank you all for the advice. It really meant a lot. Next story, wife said she hated her ex-FWB but decided to reconnect with him, started spending hours with him, then she got mad when I threatened to leave. To set the scene, my wife, 41F, and I, 40M, have been together for 15 years and have a child together, 5F. Before we met, she was friends with KC, 44M, whom she also had occasional sex. She cheated with him on her last boyfriend before the relationship was over, something she mentioned once and forgotten since that she mentioned it to me. The reason she ended their friendship was because the last time they had sex, he didn't pull out and she had to take plan B. She was mad at him for that, and decided to cut him out of her life. That was fairly recently before we met, and when she and I started dating, she was still in the process of clarifying to him that she didn't want anything to do with him anymore. Cue to now, she recently reconnected with him via another friend, and they have been spending an unusual amount of time together. Her friend pulled her into some sort of crypto thing, and is currently teaching her and a couple of other friends everything about crypto investments. She wants to learn everything about crypto investing and is attending his boot camps, but in addition to that, she also hangs out with him taking walks and just being on the phone with him. I made it clear pretty early that I find it a bit weird that going forward I don't want to see him anymore and after 15 years suddenly spending so much time with him. 0 to 100 right quick. She doesn't hide him though. She tells me when she hangs out with him or sees him, and has so far been open about their interactions. He has 3 kids and is married. It came to a head today when she announced she was going to go out with him again, after last weekend where she said she'd be going for a walk with him at night for an hour and ended up spending at least 4 hours with him taking a walk and losing track of time. I told her in no unclear terms that she is a grown woman but that the intensity of their contact is worrying and making me uncomfortable. And that if I felt that this relationship became appropriate, I would end things with her at the drop of a hat. She knows I have been cheated on in the past, and that I have a zero-tolerance policy towards cheating and cheaters. I despise it, and have never done it myself. She's upset now and currently outside in front of our house door talking on the phone. I assume she's talking to him. Meanwhile, I'm looking after our daughter and her friend. Update 1, not sure how I'm allowed to participate in this conversation, such arbitrary rules on this sub, but we just had another argument before she walked out to meet with him. She put our daughter to bed and before she left the house, she wanted to talk. Defended him and their friendship, and asked why I didn't have a problem with her other exes. I've met 2 of them and they're both stand-up guys, and she does hang out with them occasionally, but I'm not worried about them. I told her this is different, that context matters, and that I really don't understand why she thinks it's appropriate or even acceptable to meet with a former FWB and spend so much time with them. I brought up that she cheated with him, to which she corrected me that it was someone else who she cheated with on her last boyfriend, some guy with a similar name, whatever, and that they only had sex in between relationships. And then she stated that they talked it out what happened between them with the unprotected sex, but that I wasn't willing to hear it, because I told her I don't want to hear anything about the guy as I don't like him. To this I got pretty angry, asking her if she is really discussing past sexual encounters. She said yeah, it had to be talked out. We went in a few circles after, but basically it was the same stuff. I don't think it's appropriate, I am not comfortable with the intensity of their friendship, and at the moment I feel she's not being truthful, I am walking out. Also reiterated my point that she's a grown-ass woman, and can do what she wants, but she isn't free of the consequences of her actions. In the end she stood there with tears in her eyes and a look of contempt I've seen before when she's about to lose her shit, but kept her cool and said she's going off to see him. Tried to kiss me goodbye and I told her no. She then walked towards the door ranting about me being unreasonable, and I told her again that she's a grown-ass woman and that she can do as she pleases but that she needs to be ready for the consequences of her actions. Slammed the door shut and drove off. I guess we'll see what happens when she comes back. Update 2, January 17, 2025. Still get DMs here and there, so I thought I'd give everyone some closure on this. Nothing too exciting. So after she ran off to meet him at some bar, she came home around midnight. I was still up as I was watching something on TV, looked over at her, and she looked unsure. She sat down at the end of the couch where I was sitting and said she's sorry she got so angry. She met with him and they talked about the situation. Apparently, he told her that I am right and that it is weird they're spending so much time with each other. And she called a few friends to talk and get their opinion. They mirrored the same sentiments, that it's hard not to think of this as having at least an emotional affair. To be honest, I was still beyond pissed. And to hear that she only came to realize it when other people told her it was inappropriate, not just me, wasn't helping. She explained that she is learning something from him that is giving her a new lease on life, and to her, it's like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to finally start contributing financially and acquiring the skills to generate a bigger income. He is apparently a quite successful day trader, and has been teaching her and a group of other people how to day trade in extreme detail. She insisted she show me what she was doing, so I let her chew my ear off for an hour about day trading, looking at her programs, charts, indicators, and all that, ranting about financial markets etc. She's learned trading with leverage and stuff I have no clue about, but it amazes me that a woman who is too ADHD to read boring government forms and gets overwhelmed with simple adult stuff like communicating with municipalities or banks and hates math is diving headfirst into something as complex as crypto day trading. Still, she seems surprisingly knowledgeable about all this, and knowing how long it takes her to grasp things she's not interested in, I was impressed. And she was still defiant about the whole spending inappropriate amount of time stuff. I told her she needs to cool it with the contact, but I won't stand in her way learning something that she feels is a major opportunity for her. We agreed on ground rules. No evenings or weekends, no phone calls past 6 p.m., and no one-on-one meetings, only group settings. She's been stretching these rules every now and then, but largely kept to them. When she needed to bend them, she speaks to me beforehand and gives me ample of heads up, but hides her resentment of having to follow these rules. Still, she seems to want to keep the peace for now and is being proactive. Things have cooled down to a degree where I don't get angry anymore anytime she mentions him. Anyway, other than that she now thinks she's a pro and a future millionaire and constantly talks about trading, it's been bumpy for other reasons outside of this weird friendship. Her trading talk is annoying as shit and I still think she's got a little crush on her big trader hero. I have grown a bit distant in the last couple months because this whole situation emotionally drained me, but we are keeping things going. I know this is not the dramatic cheating and infidelity story some people were expecting. It's a pretty severe, rough patch in an average normal people relationship. She's not cheating on me physically, I think. She might have a crush, which happens in a long-term relationship, and I have other shit to deal with at the moment that I just can't expend the energy to obsess over this every day for hours or fight this into a dramatic my way or the highway conclusion. I don't want to blow our marriage up just to satisfy other people's personal convictions on how a relationship should be like. It's shit right now, but it's our shit. My instinct tells me it's a passing fancy, and if things go sideways still, I can always walk out. This will be my last and only update.